Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of OTH Sports View. I'm JP Butler alongside Sean Campbell and Sam Wilson with another Big 30 football edition of the show. And here we are officially past the halfway point of the Big 30 football season. We have 5 unbeatens remaining in the Big 30, and really this is the group that has set itself apart. There are a lot of other teams in the Big 30 that are struggling to this point, and really a small group that has sort of, really been pretty good all year so far. 3 of those teams on the New York side of the Big 30 border that we want to talk about, Olean High, Franklinville, Ellicottville, and CubaRushford. 2 of those teams were really involved with pretty big games over the weekend. Both you guys were there for those games. We'll start with Olean High and just a massive victory over Springville on Friday night at Bradner Stadium. Sean, this is an Olean High team that had obviously started 3-0, gotten off to a pretty good start, but we knew that their toughest games still lie ahead, and that's when we would really find out just how good this Olean High team actually was. And that really started with Friday against Springville. This is a Springville team that came into the game ranked number 4 in the Western New York small school football poll. They had just pulverized Pioneer the week before. We know how tough Pioneer can be. And so you look at those things and you think, man, this is certainly going to be a tough game. And maybe this is the game that kind of knocks Olean down a peg to where they have to kind of regroup and go from there. I think a lot of people maybe thought that. I think, Olean inside might have thought, let's see what we can do here. But instead, they win the game, and not only do they win it, they win it 26-16. They were in control for a lot of the most of the second half in that game. How was Olean High able to spring this upset?
Well, I mean, if you look at the stats, Springville really dominated in terms of the offensive numbers, big advantage in total yards, more than double in first downs and plays run. But the big thing for Olean was they had huge plays at times where they really needed them, with Springville driving inside the Olean 10. One late in the first half where Springville fumbles the ball into the end zone on a first and goal play at the 1. So that takes a touchdown off the board. Then on another Springville drive to start the second half, another deep drive into Olean territory on a 4th down play. Olean stuffs Springville kind of at the line of scrimmage. Springville fumbles the ball. Dylan Vincent scoops it up, makes a great play to get away from a tackler who's kind of trying to drag him down by the back of his jersey, and runs 91 yards for a touchdown. So between those, you're really talking about a 3-touchdown swing at the end when you're looking at it.
Right, and as you mentioned, it was just really kind of some big opportunistic moments for Olean, because if, Springville has the ball on the Olean 1-yard line, if they score there, they'll go up 2 scores at that point. Instead, Olean gets the ball back and goes down and extends its lead. So it just seems like certainly they got the contributions from Vincent again with 3 touchdowns. Garrett Bolt, who's been so solid for them, has the long touchdown run in the third quarter. I think we said that was their only play of the entire third quarter. It just seems like they were the more opportunistic team, even if they were kind of dominated a little bit on the stat sheet.
I mean, Phil Vecchio said it felt like our defense was on the field the whole game, and in that third quarter with Springville driving to go up, Springville was up 8-7 at that point. And then Vincent returns the fumble for a touchdown to give Olean the lead. And Springville comes right back out on the field, drives down to the Olean 38, another kind of promising drive, but it stalls and they turn it over on downs. Then on Olean's very first play, Garrett Bolt takes off 62 yards for a touchdown, and suddenly Olean's up 2 scores and really in control of this game rather quickly.
Right, and so even if there were a couple of things that they took advantage of, clearly this is an Olean High team that was up for this game, that was certainly better in some areas, especially in the second half, to be able to win it, and has shown in the early going here that they are for real. This Olean team, it seems like they're off to a 4-0 start now, and to me this is a more impressive 4-0 start than 2 years ago, which ended up fizzling out into a non-playoff season, just given the caliber of Springville. What does this win do for them going forward here?
It's huge. I mean, this could be Olean football's biggest win in 12 years maybe. against a team that I don't think anyone really outside of that Olean locker room would have expected them to win against Springville. And I mean, you can say Springville had these advantages in yardage, but Olean competed with this team. They scored first in this game, kind of set the tone. I mean, they deserve to win. And really looking at it now, they're in a good position to get their first playoff berth in 5 years and only their second in the past 12. And I mean, it might take only one more win to do so.
Right, and certainly, as Sean said, a little more work. They have Pioneer coming up, who it hasn't beaten since 2009, and then after that, a pretty tough East Aurora team. But after this one on Friday night, certainly they're in the driver's seat in the league, by themselves at 4-0 in the league, and closing in on a potential playoff spot here. Switching over to our other big game from Friday night, Franklinville, Ellicottville, and Randolph. Sam, you were at this one. This was a Franklinville, Ellicottville team, one of our unbeatens, going into really probably their first really big name test of the year. The week before, they did face some adversity. They were down heading into the fourth quarter against Frewsburg, but they win that game. But coming into a Randolph team on the road, that's been traditionally pretty strong, a real big test. It was a crazy game by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
One that came down to a last-second field goal, basically, and Franklinville-Ellicottville was able to prevail 37-36 to stay on top with the Maple Grove in that Class D league. What happened in this game? It seems like it was really crazy.
Where to start? It particularly the first half was one of the crazier high school football games I've ever seen, covered. You had 7 touchdowns between the two teams in that first half, only 3 in the second half, so it was a little easier if you're up in the press box trying to keep stats and things. But so Franklinville-Ellicottville is up 16-0, and I couldn't have been the only one thinking, oh wow, they might just roll through here, and that's which you don't really expect when a team goes into Randolph, even if it's not like a state champion Randolph, but they get a blocked punt to set up Brock Bleach's second touchdown of the game. They go up 16-0, and then all of a sudden Randolph seems to figure it out offensively. They get that running game going this year with Sam Jacoby as their lead back, and they get those methodical drives where they get 5 plays here, or 5 yards here, 6 yards there, and it turns into just this avalanche where they score 29. It's a 29-7 run, or 29-6 run essentially, where they go from down 16-0 to up 29-22 at halftime. It's just an amazing first half.
And then suddenly here's this adversity again for Franklinville-Ellicottville, but again in the second half, kind of back and forth.
Yeah, you had the 3 scores in the second half were each for a lead change. Franklinville-Ellicottville, they punt, I think, their first drive in that third quarter. They get the ball back, and it looks like they're going to stall out again. And then Brock Bleacha, their quarterback, who does a little bit of everything, including punting, he's back there. It's 4th and long, about 15 or so, about midfield, and they dial up a fake punt. And I guess it helps to have that kind of a dangerous player back there as your punter that he was able to run for it, and that set up their first touchdown to take back the lead. Randolph scores again in the fourth quarter. They take a small lead, and then with 2 minutes left to go, Bleach just throws for his first touchdown, his 4th overall, including his rushing, about 48 yards to Griffin Chudy, the first play of the drive. He kicks the extra point. They get a one-point lead, 37-36. Randolph, again, they're driving, but they stall out at about their 30. They have a 4th and long, about 15 seconds to go, and they actually call. And they actually call. Oh yeah, they were out of timeouts. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe they call a timeout. It's their last one. About 15 seconds to go. They call up a field goal, and the kid Ryan Shippard, who's an excellent soccer player, he has the distance. He's just a little bit left.
On a
47 yard. I mean, that's Scott Norwood length. That is.
Right.
amazing.
What did obviously a huge win to keep Franklinville-Ellicottville again undefeated and at the top of Class D.
Yeah.
What did Coach Chad Bartosik say about this win and this game afterward?
Well, he talks about how it's always so difficult to win in Randolph, even in a game where things are going so much your way at the start there. Randolph, he was very impressed, I think, with that Randolph team, but also 2 weeks in a row having to come back in the fourth quarter. You hope that coming through in those situations, showing poise. I mean, there were times where it looked like their offense was a little panicked. They had a couple drives there at end of the first half, start of the second half, where things weren't going their way, but they eventually figured it out against a pretty solid Randolph team.
And again, what does this do for a Franklinville-Ellicottville team moving forward? Just like Olean, with a pretty tough schedule still remaining,
Yeah.
Franklinville has probably their biggest test coming up in Maple Grove.
Absolutely. This 3-game stretch, particularly the next one with Maple Grove, which is one of their 3 unbeaten still in that division. Maple Grove has not had a competitive game yet, really, this year. They beat Portville 52-15, Frewsburg 51-14, Clymer Sherman Panama 37-6, and then just this week Catlettle Valley 42-0. So they're really looking for their first test. We'll see if Franklinville-Ellicottville can give them one, and if it's another game like the Titans just played, that would be quite the sight to behold. But yeah, so this, and then in 2 weeks they play Silver Creek to end the season. They have Portville in between, and that could be interesting. That was their one regular season loss last year,
Right.
Actually, Portville.
Right, and Silver Creek, the third
Yep.
remaining unbeaten
Exactly.
team in that league.
And
So
that's a team
certainly-
that beat up pretty well on Randolph to start the season.
Still-
You shouldn't sleep on that.
Yeah, still a couple of tests remaining, but again, the two teams that came out unscathed this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So the other New York team that has also gotten off to an unbeaten start, an impressive start in the early going here, is CubaRushford. This is a CubaRushford team that, behind its junior running back Trevor Smith, has really been able to kind of roll past everybody to this point. And again, on Friday night against Canisteo Greenwood, winning 46-14. Smith is he's got to be close to about 20 total touchdowns at this point. And CubaRushford has won 10 out of its last 11 regular season games. We thought a couple of weeks ago that their big game would be against Avon in that division. That was the Livingston County Division II winner last year. But it turns out that CubaRushford's biggest test might actually be this upcoming week.
Yes, they get Letchworth Warsaw at home Friday night, and hey, Letchworth Warsaw is 4-0 now too, and they just beat Avon Friday 32-7. And CubaRushford really took everything they had to be able to beat Avon 45-42 2 weeks ago. So now, I mean, the league title's on the line again for CubaRushford.
Right, and so we'll see if the Rebels can keep it going there. They come in at number 2 on our small school poll. We vote on every Monday. Sam, you're a voting member in our poll. How is that kind of shaped up? Really, I think we've had 2 teams that have kind of had a stranglehold on the top.
And you know what?
Spots.
At our banquet last year, these are the 2 teams we handed out plaques to as our year-end teams. Kane still has the top spot in the large schools, with Olean High coming up second. Those are 2 unbeaten teams. Pretty impeccable resumes so far, but Kane, I think the historical dominance, they started the season, I believe, up top, and they really haven't let up yet this year. They are number 1 in the large schools. And then Franklinville-Ellicottville, winning that game against Randolph, they hold on to their number 1 spot. You have CubaRushford and then Elk County Catholic in really leading those small schools, all unbeaten teams.
Right, and Olean High, probably the highest it's been in the poll in at least a couple of years, maybe at least 5 years or so, up to number 2 in the large school poll. Elk County Catholic is another that last remaining unbeaten. We didn't really mention a whole lot, but this is a team that's number 3 in the small school poll right now, and 5-0. And just last weekend, beating a Quad A Bradford High team 27-7. So they've got to be pretty good if this Elk team is able to kind of take it that easily to a quad A.
They get Kane Friday night, so one unbeaten is going to be knocked off. Our list is going to be down to 4 for sure.
And probably the biggest game on the Pennsylvania side of the border all year. And so we'll probably be back to highlight that game and to provide another update on what our 3 top New York teams do this weekend, all with huge games.
Yep.
And maybe touch a little bit on our early Players of the Year, Player of the Year candidates next week. So until we get to that point, thank you again for watching.